This is just a second core server that we set up. So just installed 2019 in core mode. And same thing, I want to use sconfig. And we'll go through and we'll change to our network settings first. I'm going to give her a static IP. And I'll choose option 1, static IP. For the IP address 192.168.70.16. Remember, our first core server was .15. Class C subnet on 3 octets. And our default gateway 192.168.70.2. And let's go ahead and set up DNS. And again, we'll configure DNS forwarding later and point our 2 domain controllers to each other for Active Directory integrated DNS. But for now, until we get to the point where we're ready to set up AD, I'm going to set an external DNS address as the primary DNS server. So, and that's 192.168.70.2. Okay, and preferred DNS set. I'm not going to set up a secondary or tertiary. Return to main menu. Let's see what else we want to do while we're here. Let's change the computer name. Alright, so option 2. And the new computer name, let's see, we're going with the Terminator theme. So T3000. And this will be our second domain controller, so DC2. But we'll name it. Do we want to start now? No, not yet, but so we won't see our new computer name until we reboot and restart, but there's a few other things that we want to do. If I wanted to add a local administrator account, may or may not, but I could do that. Enter account to join local administrators, and I could call this account BackDoor or something, and a password. Okay, and so I added a local admin account called BackDoor. Remote desktop, I'll go ahead and enable that. Again, I don't really need RDP sessions on a core server, so to speak, but sometimes in the initial setup process, until you get everything set up, it could be useful. So option 7, enable or disable, I'm going to say enable. And I'm going to choose the less secure option for now, but I'll go in and tighten it up later. Okay, so remote desktop has been enabled. If I configure remote management, I could go to option 4 and configure server response to ping. And again, it's always more secure not to respond to ICMP, to give them echo replies, but in the initial setup stage, that could be useful. Allowing machines just to ping our domain controller can ease the troubleshooting process when we set things up. So we set those options. Let's see if there's anything else we want to do here. We'll do Windows Update. And check our time zone. Let's check the date and time, make sure we're in the right time zone, because that could be a replication problem. If one of your servers or workstations is in a different time zone than another one, then that can interfere with the replication process, right? With that timestamp that it gets. So in this case, option 9, and let's see, we are Eastern time, so that's good, that's what we want. And the only other thing we need to do is download and apply updates. And then we'll go ahead and do that, and then once we reboot, it'll have our new name along with the static IP. So I'm going to choose updates at this point, Windows Update Settings, option 5. And let's see, manual updates. I'm going to go, yeah, usually manual updates. Alright. That way it'll only check for updates when we ask it to check for updates. Download and install updates, no. And I'm going to look for all updates. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and install everything. And we're just going to sign in. And our updates have been applied. And there's our updated hostname, T3000DC2. And okay, yeah, there's our hostname. And our IP address, let's make sure static address went through 192.168, 7016, that's what we wanted. And 2 for gateway and DNS, so that looks good. Okay, there's just a few more things, remember, that we need to do, and these will be in PowerShell. So I'm going to go into a PowerShell prompt from the command prompt. First thing I want to do is enable PowerShell remoting. So enable -PS remoting, SkipNetworkProfileCheck just to make it easier. And we'll do the first option. SkipNetworkProfileCheck. Let's see, first option. And remember we already enabled ping with the sconfig tool, but if you hadn't, you could do that. This command is deprecated, but it still works, and as long as it still works, it's a lot shorter and more succinct than the new command that has replaced it. So netshow firewall set ICMP setting 8. Okay, and that'll give some echo replies. That'll let us ping. Don't have WinProxy set up, but if I did, I'd want to reset it with netshow win HTTP reset proxy. Again, yeah, no point, don't have to, but this step is very important. When RM, I want to basically enable remote management and set up rights and the service on the server. So I'm just going to choose quick config. I'm not going to do the advanced options, but make these changes. Hang on, somebody's turning my phone off. Every time somebody's blowing up my phone when I try to make one of these videos. Okay, sorry. All right. And I just want to say yes. And you know, I'm gonna go back in and kind of configure my firewall later. But for now, to make things easy, I'm just gonna turn the firewall off until I get these 2 core servers set up and until I get AD installed, and then we'll go in and we'll kind of tighten them up with the firewall settings. So let me do set net firewall profile, and then I'm gonna do domain public and private. Domain public and private, and enabled to false. In this case, I'll pass on that from my argument. Okay, and this is all we have to do on this side of our second core server. Now remember, we have to jump over to our workstation, our Windows 10 workstation, management workstation, and from there we have to basically create a session with administrative credentials to the IP address of this server and copy the PowerShell file over that we downloaded and do the same thing we did on the first core server. So we want to install PowerShell 7. And again, what was our IP? 192.168.70.16. All right. So let's jump over to our Windows 10 management workstation. And while I'm here, I just want to change my administrator password because I haven't actually set an administrative password yet. So net user, administrator, and but I hope no one's looking over my shoulder. Oh no, you know my super secret password. Ah! Okay. And I'm going to sign out. And now I need to jump over to our Windows 10 management workstation. So in our Windows 10 management workstation, I'm going to want to open, a PowerShell console with administrator privileges, so run as administrator. Your choice. I prefer ICE, but you could open a normal PowerShell console too if you want to. That's up to you. Color coding, autocomplete. I got kind of spoiled with ICE. Who would want to use the plain old, nuts and bolts PowerShell console when you can use ICE? Just saying. Anyway, so remember what we want to do. We need to create a remote session. So, whatever you want to call the variable, banana, in this case, why not call it session? And new PS session. And we need to do computer name. And remember, it was 192.168.70.16 because our first core server was 15. and this core server is 16. And then we need to supply some credentials, and I'm going to make this parenthetical. I'm just going to call the getCredential method. And okay, let's see there. I'm trying to get autocomplete to work. Call it getCredential method, and this is going to prompt me for the local administrator account and password, which should be what I just set. So administrator and the super secret password. Okay, and so now we have our session, right? And I'm just going to comment that out. And down here, so we want to copy the actual file, and I'm going to change directory and go to software down here. And remember, that's where we copied that file, right? PowerShell-7.0.3.1 x64 MSI. That's what we want to copy. And so to do that, I'm just going to say copy item and use autocomplete there. And I'm going to copy it from C software. Ooh, and check this out. Yeah, I didn't go over. Isn't that cool? So I can actually look at my directories there, and then there's software, and in this case the file. I'll just use autocomplete this time, and I'm going to copy it to the root drive on my Windows server, and then to session, and then my session variable name, which was just session. Right, and session, make sure, all right, I use two S's there. All right, so let's run this command now. I commented the other one out. And it's just copying the PowerShell 7 MSI to my second core server. Okay, and we are done here. And I'll save that in case I want to go back and do that over again. What are we going to call this? We'll call this copy stuff, just in case I want to no point typing that over again. All right, so let's jump on our second core server and set up PowerShell 7. Just sign in, go to my root drive, and there's the PowerShell file that I want to install. Okay. And here we go. And I'm just going to go with the defaults, install. And now that I'm done installing, I can remove the installer. I'll just wildcard the rest of that and be safe. Okay, don't need the MSI anymore. We'll save some space. And let me exit and sign out of our Core 2 server. And let's go back to our Windows 10 management workstation. And we're going to load up Windows Admin Center. And I'm going to add our T3000 DC2. Add a server. And T3000 DC2, our second domain controller. Well, not yet, but it will be when we set up Active Directory on our 2019 core servers. Okay, and add it. And here we go. Just test our connection there. Okay, looks good. Our connection's good. So everything looks okay. Let's check event log access, our application logs. Okay, it looks good. Access to our logs and so forth. All right. Now I'm going to open up Windows Admin Center, and we're going to go through some of the features and functionality. And if you're going to do core server, this is probably an indispensable tool, along with RSAT tools, I guess, if you set up Active Directory, and we're going to set up AD later. Probably make that a separate video, because this one's going to be long as it is. Okay, so in this case we have our two core servers. I'm going to go look at DC1. And okay. And connecting to T3000 DC1. Okay. And notice it just gives us an overview of the server at first. But one of the things I want to do, I'm going to skip around a little bit and then we'll go through all the features. But I'm just going to set up local users and groups. I'm going to access on my core server, DC1. And I'm going to go to groups. And I'm going to go to remote desktop users, and I'm going to add administrator, the administrator of that core server. And I'm going to add, remember the account we created called BackDoor? Alright, BackDoor, and I'm just going to add Carly Salali. Alright, so with those users, what I wanted to show you, two things right off the bat that's so cool about Windows Admin Center. I just wanted to add myself into remote desktop users group on DC1. So notice that I have remote desktop access to DC1. And the coolest thing about this tool is the way it centralizes everything into like one complete administrative tool. It really is comprehensive. I could access anything that I could normally access with the GUI on a graphical 2019 installation, but in this case I'm accessing a core server, and all of the resources for the graphical interface are on my Windows 10 workstation instead of on my 2019 servers, which is where they should be. Why should a server waste its resources, producing graphical output or running graphical apps and things? That's the work of a client. I guess you could argue that's the work of a client operating system. So one of the benefits of setting up a core server and then remotely managing it, of course the primary benefit is it decreases the attack surface. So it's a lot more secure. It's a lot more simple, updates aren't as big and things just run smoother. They require less resources, less memory, less CPU cycles, because it only has to worry about serving out services doesn't have to worry about providing a rich graphical environment. That's the job of a client like Windows 10. You could argue. Anyway, before it times out, if it hasn't already, because I talk so much. So administrator password. Oh, and I want to put the host name of the machine. So T3000 DC1. And specify that administrative account. And again, so if I send Control Alt Delete, in this case I'm signed into my core server. See? Pretty cool, huh? So right off the bat, I have remote desktop. I also have a remote PowerShell session. And this is part of that functionality that we enabled on the core server itself, right? We wanted to enable remote PowerShelling. So here I am. I have a remote shell to the server. And boom. I'm into PowerShell on my core server. Pretty cool, huh? Yeah. All right. So in addition to that, you have a lot of Azure things here, but I just set this up. I haven't even activated these VMs yet, so I can't really go over that. Don't have a need for that, but I can look at my certificate store. Okay. I can look at devices. I can look at my logs. All right. Basically, I'm remotely accessing event viewer content from Windows Event Center on my DC1, T3000 DC1 core server. Okay. So like security logs. See? And full log access. I can access the file system. Now I don't have to do it through a PowerShell session. I mean, I still could if I wanted to, but now I have a graphical means of copying and cutting and pasting files and things, just as if I had a local file explorer. If the GUI were installed on the server, but it's not. It's core server, but through my Windows 10 management workstation, I have access to the, graphical access to the file system. All right, over here. So here's all my files and things. Okay. Firewall. All right, remember how we disabled that via the command shell on the core server, but I can manage it remotely now if I want to. Even my NIC interface, we already looked at local users and groups. If I wanted to create users or groups or modify group membership, but I'll bring that back up again. Okay, there's all my accounts and BackDoor and Carly Salali. I can access my network interface settings. Although be careful with this one. Remember, you're remotely managing your PowerShell server. So if you misconfigure your network settings or change an IP or something, you're going to lose connectivity. You can lose connectivity to your server. So that's something that you might want to actually sign into your core server to make settings changes here. But that's up to you. Performance monitor. We went over PowerShell processes, remote registry access. we went over remote desktop roles and features. So in the next video we do, where we set up Active Directory on our core servers, and then after that we're also going to do like Exchange 2019 server with our core servers. Here's where we could access those roles and features, right? So in this case, Active Directory, roles and features and services that we want to install. Scheduled tasks, storage on my local machine, Windows updates. We already updated it using the sconfig tool on the core server itself, but if I wanted to, I could access Windows update data. Okay, so there's an update. And I'll just go back to roles and features. And this is the one we want, the Active Directory domain services. So when we set up Active Directory, we'll be using that one. But at this point, I'm going to put all this into one video, setting up these two 2019 core servers and the Windows 10 Management Workstation. In the next video, we'll look at setting up Active Directory, joining the workstation to the domain, and installing RSAT tools on our Management Workstation so we can get all those cool Active Directory tools, but on our Windows 10 Workstation instead of, the server GUI. Okay?